Well, Heavenly Delusion is rushing headlong into its darkest arc, but not before we take a pit stop in one of the wackiest and most disturbing side quests in the story thus far, the Walled Town. A place that makes you wish that we were dealing with just simple cannibals. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem, not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. If you haven't started watching Heavenly Delusion yet, beware, spoilers ahead. Get on it, binge this series, it is so worth it. Episode 10 is an interesting departure from the rest of the show as we have so far seen it. This is even reflected in the animation change throughout most of the episode until we return to good old dystopian monster killing and post-apocalyptic humans going nuts. Maru and Kiriko are traveling with the wandering informant and storyteller Juchi to return to this walled town. Juchi says that he escaped from this fortress where women used men for breeding. Two women had taken a liking to Juchi and even had a kid with him. They were going to escape together from this brutal community, but they were betrayed, caught, and the lovers were executed while Juchi's son was reclaimed by the other women. Juchi himself ran away like a coward. He wants to find out what happened to his kid and is willing to trade travel to Maru and Kiriko in exchange for their assistance. Maru accepts the job because he sees this as a win-win. They can help save a kid while getting a safer car ride across Japan as they continue to seek for heaven. Once they near the community, Juchi feels up Kiriko. Not as anything sexual, mind you, but to make sure that her figure is as good as it looks. Why? Well, because the ladies in the walled town are a bunch of psychos who hate good-looking gals and will disfigure them. So he says, you might want to cover up a little bit more all those curves you got going on. Thankfully, however, there are no psychotic ladies running around when Maru, disguised as a gal, and eliciting this hilarious moment.
そうですね。そりゃお姉さんですよ。
なんだこの人。
And Kiriko enter the walled town. This place is an abandoned mess, where everything seems to be ripe for the picking if they stick around and loot it. But there are no women, there are no men, and no children. Everyone has vanished. It's then that a spider Hiroko attacks them, and they nearly die to this crazy ice attack. It's a heart-pounding, crazy battle of wits that leads to Kiriko getting a decisive but non-fatal hit in on the man-eater. She and Maru reunite with Juchi outside and report their suspicion that the Hiroko killed everyone inside. However, they're proven wrong when the men from the community come across them on a hunting trip. They recognize Juchi and reunite him with his son. Hooray! Everything is all right. The depraved ladies are gone, Juchi's son is alive, and the men have a prosperous outpost going on. Ah, all's well that ends well. Then everything goes south during the night. The ice attack returns. Kiriko flees with the kid, trying to protect him, but is constantly assailed by ice. Maru saves her just before she succumbs to the frost and wakes up with the baby. Turns out, Juchi's son is a Hiroko in the making! And there, the episode is resolved in a very eerie way. Maru refuses to kill the kid because, well, he's just a baby. It's the right move to make, giving the kid a chance to live, but the men will now have to be extremely careful around him because this is a potential monster in the making. But the real monster turns out to be Juchi, who in secret murders the man who betrayed him and the women who fell in love with him, and he brutally slaughters his old friend, splashing his own son with gore before stealing a car from his fellows and runs far away with his child, turning his back on everything. At this point, two monsters have been unleashed, and a small commune is left broken and weakened as a result. Meanwhile, Maru and Kiriko get Juchi's van in trade for their work and are speeding off to their next destination. While they are the main victors in this episode, their start on the next leg is embarrassing as Kiriko stalls the engine. This creates a juxtaposition of two scenes that subtly clue us into changes happening with her, which I will get to later in this video. So this episode, with its clashing animation styles, experimental flashback photos, wacky humor, and disturbing ending, comprise what I would argue is the darkest side story at this point in the series. Now, that's a big claim considering the emotional journey we just went on with the Immortal Order, especially when you realize that we witnessed the bittersweet conclusion to Shiro and Mimihime's story. Two characters who fell in love so long ago and were so tragically doomed to never fully enjoy their freedom or their love. But ultimately, they were granted a moment to die as humans and together. And that important story happens against the backdrop of a rising warlord who has no idea what horrors he's helped unleash. When put into those terms, this much smaller side quest might seem insignificant. However, there's a lot to learn, and while Mimihime and Shiro have a bittersweet ending, Juchi and his son have a disturbing open-ended conclusion to their story. If we think about it here, the Wall Town is a pinnacle dystopian nightmare. While it is a commune of dominant women, these women abuse each other, brutally disfiguring, mutilating, and killing those who don't fit their shallow demands for beauty. In a post-apocalyptic world, nonetheless, they take advantage of men in the worst way possible and callously discard children who don't survive. This community got exactly what it deserved, but their actions leave physical and unseen scars on the land and its people. Juchi is no longer a weak but loving man. He's now a conniving, traumatized killer, looking for revenge and destroying what could have been a new start and paradise because he could not forgive the other men or himself. He robs his son of a hopeful future. The morality of his decisions are definitely up for debate, but the outcomes are undeniable. Furthermore, we are given some horrifying evidence that just killing the Hiroko in human form is not enough. Their cores must be destroyed as well. One of Juchi's lovers was a Hiroko, and though she was executed, she came back as a monster who is still on the loose, and her son, without proper rearing and training, runs the risk of becoming a horrible creature as well. This means that saving the world from the man-eaters is going to be even tougher than Maru and Kuroko previously thought. And yes, I do understand that this whole mutation process is brought on by a disease. However, we also have seen that you can still unleash these kinds of powers without having the disease actively within you, which is why I say proper child raising would definitely help out right here. Ultimately, this episode goes to show that when people do the right thing, bad consequences can still arise as a result. People are complicated and contradictory, causing all kinds of issues when the chances for healing and reconciliation are open and apparent. This is a very real, very harrowing way to see the world, and it's the kind of message that can easily give way to pessimism. The next thing we need to consider is what is happening with Kuroko. Remember that Kuroko is really Haruki's brain in Kiriko's body. As a result, Kuroko sees herself as a guy, but whose body not only has the appearance of a mature woman's, but is now resuming the natural functions of a mature woman's body. Yeah, I don't envy her, acquaintance with that time of month when it comes. But here's the thing. In this episode, we see Kuroko do something stereotypically girlish by wanting to be seen as cute and feminine. This is something that the Haruki side of Kuroko has avoided throughout the entire story so far. So it seemingly comes out of nowhere, but then at the end, Kuroko is unable to drive Yuchi's van, something that Kiriko would have been able to do no problem. These two scenes purposefully clash to suggest to the observant viewer that changes are happening to Kuroko. While she views herself as a boy, girlish traits are becoming more and more prevalent. They're coming to the forefront, transforming her even further. However, she still has all of the tendencies and memories of the brother. This development is going to get highlighted in the worst way possible in upcoming episodes. With the show's suddenly increased pacing, we are getting to a very fateful showdown with Robin. That will be fun to see go down. Oh boy. And that's why this side story, in my opinion, is the darkest one in the series. At least up to this point. There are way deeper and darker things down the road. So buckle up. But now, what can we novice writers really learn from this little deviation to the main story? First of all, subplots must complement the larger story and its main characters. We get interesting developments for Kiriko in this episode, as well as solidifying key aspects of Maru's personality. This helps create a through line that we can follow and keep us engaged, so that way we're not lost in the overall story. This little side quest also allows them to get a van, which is going to be very essential to their future adventures. Secondly, a good subplot is a contained story, even when it is attached to the larger narrative. Like a strongly written chapter, for instance, a subplot has its beginning, middle, and end, telling a satisfying tale that supports the larger story that is at hand. Third, it is okay to have clashing characters and messages in a story so long as they adhere to what you've established for your cast and your story's atmosphere. Nothing in what we have seen here rejects the dark survivalist feel that we were introduced to back in episode 1. Maru and Kiriko are still themselves, learning and growing along the way despite Juchi's personal arc in this side quest. While I personally wouldn't recommend always going this route, the juxtaposition of themes, scenes, and characters can help highlight messages and themes within your broader story. Plus, it is something that is really fun to write. However, I caution against it because it can get messy, and you can easily overpower one element of your story with another if you're not careful. Well, that's all I have for this particular review and analysis. If you'd like more Heavenly Delusion reviews and analyses, let me know in the comments. Also, if you would like to support us novice authors here on YouTube, please like and share our video, and we would be ever so grateful if you subscribed. But what really helps us out here is if you check out the books that we've written and published. Links for them are in the video description below. Thank you for joining us on this crazy, spooky, sometimes dystopian adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.